Okay, good afternoon again, everybody. Thanks for hopping on and joining another one of our bi-weekly Criterion Client Success learning series here. As I mentioned to those who had joined a little bit earlier, we'll be covering the employee engagement in this session, and basically what we're going to be looking at are ways to interact or have employees interact in employee self-service and what options you have there across the different features and functionality. A little bit different voice for everybody here today on this series, at least, but hopefully not to a lot of folks on the call here today. We should possibly have meeting or had meetings before in the past, but just covering here for Steve this week, and he'll be back on our next series session in 2 weeks. So as I'd mentioned, we're going to be covering employee engagement here today. You should be able to see my PowerPoint slide here, and we're going to be focusing on, again, employee self-service. So a lot of our time will be spent in self-service itself, and then we'll also be looking at a couple of different configuration items on the admin side that can enhance the experience for employees. So I'm going to move over to employee self-service. And you should be able to see my screen here. Okay, and so one of the things here, so whenever you sign into Criterion, regardless of what your access level is, if you're a system administrator, or if you are just an employee signing in who may only have access to self-service alone here, you do have a very similar experience, and you're always just going to be signed directly into self-service. So you're not going to be going over to the admin side until you kind of actually click over there. But really a lot of what you're seeing here, you may not necessarily have explored too deeply, or you may not, or we may not have done that on one of these sessions here directly. So we're going to be getting into a lot of the items that you're seeing here in self-service. So we're going to be looking at our feed here and how that works with communities. We're going to actually look at a relatively new feature here, which is our feedback module and how that may work. We're also going to look at what other things are available in self-service to kind of communicate or provide to employees as resources. You'll see down here we have a couple of items for our external links. So you can add links here, maybe it's out to your own website, things like that, and we'll show you how to set those things up. Okay. So again, what you can see here, first and foremost, most prominently displayed in employee self-service is the feed. So within the feed, you're going to have different communities. And so these communities are basically different groups of employees who would then be able to kind of see and interact with the posts that are available. So we'll talk about how you create those communities and what sort of limitations you may be able to put in place there. But really, these are all different ways that we're looking at today for somebody as a client who's already live on Criterion or perhaps approaching being live as a really good way to interact with the employee user base and basically get the best out of Criterion for you as an admin, but also for all of your employees and interacting with Criterion and making use of all the different features and also communicating with them about company events, things of that nature using ESS. So again, first and foremost, we're going to talk about our communities. Now, some folks who've already been live on Criterion may already have these communities set up, but we're going to just go over how to configure those as well. So what we would do from here is we'd go from the admin side and we would just click over into one of our modules to go over to the settings and configuration. So I already have one of those open here as a tab up top. So I have my communities already open. So when you're over in your admin side, to get there, you would just go to the settings gear at the top right. You'd go to employee engagement, and you'd come down here to communities. So communities, again, are defined groups of employees and will show in employee self-service when you go to post. So you can see right here that I would be able to choose a community to post into. So we'll show how that changes in just a moment. So to set up a community here, you would hit this add button. And when you do so, you're going to be set with the options here. You just give it a name. So we'll call this training 523, so we know what it is. We can choose what employers it applies to, so you can go across employers with a community. So if you have multiple entities, you can basically create a combined community here. So this is a good example of where you may want to differentiate, where you may have a company or entity-wide type of communication for a specific community, or you may want to limit that to one employer or the other. So when you've chosen an employer, what then becomes available to set is the employee groups. So you can see here, you have to obviously create it as active, and you'll also see that we have another setting on badges. So badges we're not going to get too in depth on today, but basically the badges are sort of awards or attributes that you can give to an employee in employee self-service. So this would be a control on what interactivity employees may have within self-service there. So as I was saying, when you've chosen an employer, you then will choose an employee group. So you'll see these are defined by the employer that I'm selecting from. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to choose active employees here. And then the other important toggle in this is this can post toggle. So what this does here is it defines who is allowed to go into employee self-service and enter something new into the feed. So you may have certain communities you set up, let's say within a department or within management level, where you want to have lots of interactivity and let folks post in there. But if it's a more general company-wide community, you may want to limit who is available to post with this toggle here. So my active employee group will contain all of my employees. And if I marked that as can post, it would be all of the employees able to then post. So maybe not something you'd like to have. Now, I know from checking our setup in this employer here that this mass forum assignment employee group has just 2 employees, one of which I'm signed in as, and I will set that as who can post here. So again, this can overlap. So my employees in the mass forum assignment employee group will overlap, of course, with employees in my active employee group, but I'm further defining that they are the ones who are able to post, not everybody who's a member of the active employee group. So if I hit confirm here, that'll save my employee groups. You can also give just a description of the community as well, should you need to, some extra formatting and photos and things like that. But we're just going to save this here. And you'll see we now have a new community that's been added in. You'll see the same employee count here again, as I was mentioning before. I had my active employees, and they can be mutually inclusive of that other employee group, which is what we're seeing. So I'm going to go back out into employee self-service. And if I refresh here, we'll see a new community available to post it. And just a reminder, as we're going along here, the question and answer section of the Zoom webinar should be available to you. If you have any questions, you can post those in, and we'll do our best to reply to those live here. If not, we will get back to you on those as a follow-up. Okay, so now when I go to post a message, I can say we are live in the training. And when I go to choose a community, you'll see we now have that new community that we'd added there for the training 523. Okay, so you can hit post there. Now you'll see it didn't go right to the top, and the reason for that is you can see there's a couple of pinned posts here. So this green icon here indicates that it's pinned. If I am the person that has created the post here, I can edit this. So if I hit edit and pin to top, we would see that now move to the top here. So just a few things you can do with that posting. Now, what I wanted to show you here was an example of another employee who has access to the community, but does not have access to be able to post. So I'll bring up another window here. And you can see this is another employee, Nate Shelley. He is signed in. He has just the employee access into self-service. So he doesn't have any access into the admin side, and he is not a member of the group that is marked as able to post. So if I refresh here now, you'll see the community post, but I can't actually do anything or post anything under this employee's profile in self-service. Okay, and there it is. We're live in the training. Okay, so again, if you have any questions on that, just throw them into the Q&A and we're gonna keep going along here. Okay, so one of the other items here that I'd mentioned early on, and you can see as we're signed in as the not system admin employee here, we have some resources that you can add on the employer side. So you can see here, we have a link out to the Criterion website, which will open up in a new tab for you. So this just goes to our main Criterion page. That of course can be done as your own page. We also have a link out to an internal page here, where that clicks into another part of self-service. So you can link to those different things using this external links functionality. So I'll show you where that is set up on the admin side. I'm gonna go back over to my system administrator user here, and I'm gonna go back over to an admin tab that I have open. And again, we're just gonna be working from our settings here, settings gear, and you can see under general, you have self-service links. So here you'll see we have Criterion website and employee forms. The description is the text that will display in the external links. And then the URLs would be something that you add right here by just saying training series. And maybe you have a YouTube link or an internal page. You may have, let's say, benefits information, and you may want to link out to your benefit provider as an external resource for an employee there. Okay, so that's how you would add and manage your external links, which show as a widget in employee self-service. The other item that I wanted to show you as a sort of employee engagement item are videos. So similar to the self-service links, you would provide the external link here with the video itself. So again, if you have your own internal YouTube page or some other sort of source or hosting, you'd be able to post the video and the URL here. So again, you just hit the add button, you'd give it the description and URL, and then whether or not it's public then shows whether or not it goes into and becomes available to employees in self-service. So videos in employee self-service, clicking back over here, would be available from our resources and company videos right here. So you'll see if we click to company videos, we have those two same links that we see over on the admin side. Okay, and again, different than things we've already kind of covered on learning management and those types of other series, where if you have actual LMS content with videos, those would show up in courses. This is more of a just here's the video link, but there's no actual tie out to say, oh, this employee watched this video, or to ensure that an employee has actually clicked out on a video itself. Okay. So the other item I wanted to show you around videos and how you can use those in self-service is within our feed here. So if you were to have, again, a YouTube or some other embeddable link, so within or with the actual video source itself, what you can do is you can actually take that iframe link, and I'll show you what that is from YouTube. But when you click and open up a new post here, you have this button over here, which is called Source Edit. So the Source Edit basically lets you go into, more or less what amounts to HTML, like website type code. And from there, you can go to, again, let's say a YouTube video. So here we're just looking at our very most recent training series from 2 weeks ago. And if you take the share button and take the embed, it gives you this little bit of info here, which if I copy, I can take over to self-service here, make sure I'm in source edit, copy that in, and hit post. Oh, got choose community, but you'll see now that the video will display in the actual ESS post. Now I didn't pin that one to the top, so it'll kind of drop down a little bit, but you can see now here's that video that we just posted. Okay, so just another good way to engage with employees. You could use the same links basically from the company videos, and if you wanted to just post them into self-service like that, you just use that source edit button and paste in the iframe copy. Okay. All right. So the other item I mentioned off the outset here is the feedback This is a relatively new functionality here. There's a few different things that we can do with this on the admin side, where you can make feedback anonymous or not. That would be set up within the actual admin settings. But within ESS, you can see for Ted here, he has access to feedback. So he can give or request feedback. So if I click on give, I can choose an employee to be a recipient of the feedback. So this case, it's not anonymous as it's set up. So I can choose the other employee whom I'm signed in as, Nate Shelley. And then you'll see the available questions which have been set up on the feedback settings. I'll show you that in just a moment. So how did you perform in practice this week? Nate was great this week. And you'll see there are options here for good or to improve. So in this case, well done. And we can say send. And that would go to Nathan on his profile to see that actual feedback. You can also request feedback, and when feedback is requested, so that creates a little bit of a task and workflow where the feedback would then show up under tasks for the employee you've requested the feedback from. So if we go over to our other employee here, who we were looking at before, and Nate, we can go to our performance area. And you can see we now have an item called My Feedback under here. Just to note that this is a security profile setting under employee self-service. You just have to give them access to feedback, and employees would see the My Feedback and also the feedback widget up here. So we can go over to Nate here and My Feedback, and you'll see there are two feedback receives here. So we received feedback on 2 occasions. You can see the date and what the feedback itself was. So again, you may get anonymous feedback depending on the setting. And then if he's given any feedback, those would show here as well. Okay, so we're gonna go back over to our admin side and kind of round that out for you. So again, on our admin page here and in our settings, you'll see we now have the feedback option under employee engagement. You'll see we have the question here. So how did you perform in practice this week? So if you wanted to add another question, that would then show into the feedback option in employee self-service. How did you like training this week? Something along those lines. Save that. And if we hit update, those will now be available questions there. Okay, you'll see again, it is employer specific for the feedback, and then it will show for particular employees there. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to talk about calendars and events. So another couple of options or items that can be utilized in employee self-service with employees and on the admin side where you can create events themselves. So we see we have a hand up, but so Shannon, if you have a question, you can also just submit that into the Q&A area as well. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back out into self-service here. Okay, so within self-service, we have a couple of different resources that we're looking at here. So you can see under the calendar icon, I have some calendars which are listed. So 2 that are listed here. And then I also have another calendar called events. So for the calendars that are listed here, these are calendars that I, as an employee, have created directly, and I can do so by going over to the settings gear within ESS. So this is like ESS employee settings. And under here, you'll see the calendar option. So we'll go over to calendar, and you can see the 2 that I have created here. So we have my own and team time offs, and we have holidays. So you can combine these into one calendar. There's no need to necessarily exclude the calendars or make them as their own sort of separate calendar. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But when you add a calendar, so we'll call it training example, you can see we have a bunch of different options for what do you want to show within that calendar. So you can see we have my own time off and team time off. So I can say my time off and my team time off, which you would have seen on that other calendar there. You can also combine, again, holidays into that. You can do this across this calendar itself. You can also have separate calendars for that as well. They're not necessarily, they don't need to be mutually exclusive as to what you show. So again, you may want to have something where you see literally all of the things happening, all of the possible calendar events or calendar options. You may have one that you just want to see everything on, but then you may want to have one that's more focused where you just see, I need to know when my team is going to be off and have that as a calendar. Okay, so the nice thing about this, and again, we'll just add the holidays and we'll add my time off, is that you can also create an iCalendar link here, and you can take that iCalendar link and actually create it as a custom or additional calendar in Outlook, and it'll actually populate and update as you create or add events. So you can then view your Criterion calendar with that iCalendar functionality in Outlook. Okay, so when I do that, you'll see here, once I save it, I'll actually get the iCalendar link. So basically all you would do is copy that link. We got a little copy button out here, copy to clipboard, take that link, and then within Outlook, there would be a way to create an external or a custom calendar when you do that. And when you do that, you would just put in that link and it would have that calendar then in Outlook for you. Okay. So you can see here, as I was mentioning before, here's our just training example. But if I were to click into these other calendars which are created, you can go back and select other items that weren't previously selected and the calendar will update. So there's no, again, need to separate those calendars out unless you just want to have a little bit of a cleaner view and not see everything kind of jumbled together onto one calendar. It would be up to your preference, or in this case, again, the employee's preference themselves. So they would need to go and create these calendars for themselves here. Lastly, you'll see one other item in here called employee groups. So basically, if you have my team time off and you have a big team, you may want to filter that out by, let's say, just anybody who's hourly or just anybody who is a member of or has a shift rate. You may want to see certain dates and things that they're off there. But again, let's say departments. So if you have access to more than one department, you may want to have a time off calendar for each of those different departments that you have access to, and you would do that with this employee group filter on the team functionality here. Okay, and you can always go back, as I was saying, and enable the iCalendar here, and that link will generate for that calendar as well. And then you can copy that, create a new calendar in Outlook, and it would have the same effect. Okay. All right, and then on the event side, so you can see here under calendar, we also have events. These are a little bit more structured here, where they come from the event calendar that would be set up on the admin side. So you can see we have event calendar for benefits, training, and Christmas in June. So if I wanted to add something here, I am restricted by what existing event calendars are already there. So I can add something else with a date and description, but only if it's tied out to that existing event calendar. So you may have, let's say, weekly meetings that you wanted to create as an event, or you may have holiday parties or weekly team get-togethers, things like that as recurring events, where you can then add each instance of that event by date and keep it onto the team happy hour, team building, whatever it may be, benefit or event calendar, excuse me, and add the rest of those items on there for each one as they reoccur. Okay. All right. And then the last sort of engagement or item that you may want to have or point out to your employees as something to make use of in employee self-service would be company documents. So company documents, a little bit different, of course, than my documents. My documents will be employee specific, but company documents, you may have some resources. Again, you may have benefit resources, you may have other reports, things of that nature that you want to have and make available to employees. And those will be available from the resources and company documents section for the employees. You'll see, excuse me, these are all broken out by the document folder. So the document location type here. We have one for our T4s, so in Canada. We also have W2s. So if You make use of the publishing functionality in Criterion to publish documents to employee self-service, in particular W-2s or T4s. Those would show in the employee's My Documents, but there may be other background or information that needs to be in here as well. But again, this is where you would have company-wide documents. So you may upload a handbook here for employee reference, things like that. And basically just kind of keep or add where appropriate company documents that you want employees to have access to. Now, you can have company documents that employees don't get to see in self-service, but that would be set up on the admin side where you would determine whether or not it should be a public-facing document. Okay. All right. And so just to give you a couple of quick references. Again, on the admin side, we have our events, we have company documents under general here. So our documents and all of these different breakdowns. So again, you'll see those are the same folders that we were already seeing in employee self-service. And again, you can see the share aspect of it, whether or not it should be shared. And you can see that one's marked as yes, which is why we saw that file available under the self-service here. Okay. All right, so we had a couple of questions here. So I see there's a question about like how to walk through Outlook calendar. Basically, if you go to your Outlook calendar tab, there is a create calendar button. I can't show you my specific Outlook, but if you wanted to follow up with us on that, we can kind of show you where it would be. Give you some steps. I just don't want to show my personal Outlook on the webinar here, but just follow up with us or your partner support, and we'd be happy to show you how to do that. Okay, and I see Shannon had a question that got answered. Yep, there's notifications that go out. So I see Leanne had a question about employee engagement survey. So we do have some additional details on that for the feedback. We can kind of go over that a little bit more in depth, Leanne, if you'd like. But I think short answer is probably yes, but we just want to know a little bit more information from you to kind of work with you and get that set up. Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, we'll follow up with you, Leanne, on that one, and be sure to help you out on that. Okay, so lastly, just to wrap up here, just about on time, go back to our training series documentation here. So we have a couple of sessions coming up, of course, every 2 weeks is our plan. We have incomes coming up next time. I think Steve will be back for that one. So going through how to set up different incomes, different types, calculation methods, all that good stuff. And then we're going to have certified rates after that. We had some nice new enhancements on that one in our most recent release. And then we're going to go into custom fields and screens. That's one that's been out for about a year at this point. So it'd be good to do a follow-up and make sure folks are making use of that if they're interested. And then last one in terms of what's on our immediate future here for recruiting. So we have a little bit of a follow-up to some of our recruiting session that we had done most recently. So that's the plan upcoming. And again, if you have any additional questions or follow-up that you're looking for off the call here, reach out to your support contact or partner support, and we'd be sure to follow back up with you and get all that worked out.